Hello and welcome to the Barrel Room. We are excited that you have pulled up a chair and are ready to listen as we dive into whiskey, history, and experiences. Once again on this episode of the Barrel Room podcast, we would like to thank our sponsors for making this episode possible. Beanstalk Web Solutions, Fallen Brothers Crafted Spirits, and the Barrel Room Bourbon Club. To learn more about these sponsors, you can check them out on our website at thebarrelroompodcast.com. And now let's welcome our hosts Kenny Gales and Bryan Bisking to this week's episode on the Barrel Room podcast.
Welcome to the first episode of the Barrel Room podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in today for this first inaugural episode. Kenny and I are excited to kind of share some of our experiences in the bourbon industry, as well as just other reviews of things that we've witnessed or have done in our lives, and just looking forward to kind of sharing the insight that we have. Kenny, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Kenny Gales. I'm founder of Fallen Brothers Crafted Spirits, and Bryan approached me about starting this podcast, and I was more than happy to jump on board and co-host it with him.
Yeah, I've so some funny story. My wife and Kenny actually went to high school together, and that's how I got to know Kenny. And I was telling Kenny a funny story. My college roommate Ryan Peebles and I used to drink whiskey, cheap whiskey. And then put the empty bottles on top of our cabinets, so we knew which bottles we had tried. And when I sold my second house before I moved this way, and Ryan moved to Kansas City, we had like 200 empty bottles of bourbon that's just up there that we had tried over the time, and it was a lot of fun. So when I met Kenny and realized he had this passion for bourbon, we just kind of hit it off. And so the show is really just talking about a couple different bottles that we're going to try every other week. Tell you what we taste in it. Tell you a little bit of history of the bourbon that we have researched, and then the last half of the show is just sharing experiences that either Kenny has witnessed or I've witnessed. Like why do I go to Disneyland all the time or Disney World all the time, and how do I go about it? Or Kenny goes to Traverse City quite often up in Michigan, so he's going to review that one episode. We'll review things that we have done on vacations with our families or experiences we've had here in St. Louis or anywhere around the country, and just kind of share those reviews as we're reviewing bourbon. We're also going to review real life experiences that we have had to try to bring light to some different things that maybe you haven't had or had the opportunity to go on, that you, after hearing and listening to us, you might think, oh, that sounds like a fun little trip. Like my wife and I just got back from a Virgin cruise line, so we'll review that later down the road and kind of tell you about our experience on that cruise line. But tonight, the goal is to sample a few bourbons. We're actually going to be sampling 3 tonight. We're going to be doing Green River Single Barrel. We're also going to be sampling a Barrel King pick and E.H. Taylor Single Barrel Bottle and Bond are the 3 bourbons we're going to try tonight. And then we're going to share quite a funny story about our last experience to Kentucky when we went to pick up some barrels from Green River. So we'll get into that here later on the show. But for now, let's start with Green River.
Yeah, and I think one of the big unique things about this show is we're going to give you experiences, and at the same time, you're probably going to laugh at us because, we've done some silly things or made some mistakes or, but that's real life. That's real experiences. So that's what we want to give you as part of the show. So, but without further ado, let's go ahead and try this Green River.
So this is a Green River single barrel distillery team pick number 2, 126.4 proof. Now, you're probably not going to find this in the store because what I understand is it only sold at Green River?
Yeah, the distillery picks are typically just at Green River in the gift shop. Yep.
But don't be fooled. There's a white label Green River pick called Full Proof that looks literally identical to this bottle. Mm-hmm. But it's a little different. I mean, the Full Proof is still very good, but this is the single barrel that I believe you can only get down in Owensboro, Kentucky, where Green River's at. So let's see what this thing tastes like. Taste stone fruit, Kenny?
No, I don't get stone fruit on this one, but
No,
yes.
I don't either. It's oaky.
It's definitely oaky. No, I don't know if any of you know, but stone fruit's a newer category as far as tasting notes on whiskeys, and it's a category that I've ran into a couple times through the bourbon clubs I've been in. And typically, when somebody says stone fruit is what they get out of a whiskey, you're like, well, what the heck is that? You know, so every time I had heard it, I was always curious. I was like, what in the world is stone fruit? And I was like, can you give me like a more better descriptive answer? And they're like, well, you know, just like red fruit. And I'm like, okay, so like, come on, like give me a little more, you know? And then they're like, well, you know, I don't know, like cherries or something. But if you go and look up stone fruit online, it's like a very wide
Super
category.
wide.
So it's got anything from plums, cherries, the nectarines, peaches, apricots, and they're like,
which are
okay.
radically different flavors.
Correct. Yeah. So to me, you know, recently we were on a trip to Western Kentucky distilling and to pick up 2 barrels, and basically when I was trying some whiskeys, I just was like, oh, I get stone fruit out of that. And they're like, what the hell's stone fruit? You know? And I'm like, well, funny thing is I was wondering the same thing, you know? So, but anyway.
Kind of an inside joke, I guess.
Yeah.
So what do you get out of this other than oak?
So definitely get a little oak, you know, you get the caramel on the front, a little vanilla
on the back. Yep. It's good though. It's smooth. A little hot. 126.
Yeah, but it drinks smooth for 126.
Yeah, it does for sure.
I think it's balanced overall.
Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's anything crazy going on here, but I think overall it's a good balanced, full-bodied whiskey.
Yeah. I think it's very good.
Yeah, I don't get much fruit on the nose.
I don't either.
It's mainly just
I get
that oak.
I get the oak, I get the caramel, I get the vanilla. There's a little like dusty hint, or
it definitely has that somewhat musty rickhouse floor.
Yeah, for sure.
Vibe to it.
You can smell it even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was initially what I got right off the nose when I tried it or sniffed it.
Yeah. So the crazy thing is, and we'll get into this here later on as we get into the show, but you know, Kenny and I had the privilege to go down and do a tour, behind the scenes tour, I guess I would say, with a great guy named Zach Macy. And we'll probably talk about him later here in the show as well. But you know, I had never had Green River before. And when Kenny was talking to me about Green River, I was like, I've never had any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started doing some research on the history of the brand and how it came to be, I found it very interesting that it was the 10th oldest distillery in all of Kentucky. It was founded back in 1885 by J.W. McCullough, and they basically ran that distillery as Green River till about 1955 and then shut down. And it was unoperational up until 2014. A family came in and bought it and started renovating the facilities. 2016, they opened. And then their first release was 2022, I believe, was their first release. And then they added their wheated bourbon in 23. And so now they got the full proof. They've got the wheated. They just added a rye last year, 24. And then they have their
the straight bourbon.
The straight bourbon. Yep. Yeah, it's a black label, the straight bourbon. So really, really cool story. I will tell you, from my experience when we went down there, really, really cool distillery. Very, very large. Much larger than I was expecting. I mean, they said they were doing, 300,000 barrels?
Yeah, about 300,000.
300,000 barrels a year. So,
yeah, things are kind of changing a little bit there. I know, like Bardstown Bourbon Company, they were acquired by Bardstown Bourbon Company last year. So, you know, some things are kind of changing. They got a little more access. You know, Bardstown Bourbon Company's doing all their bottling now and stuff like that. So, yeah,
I think Pritzker Capital is who actually owns both Bardstown and Green River. So. But it was, it's a good bourbon. If you ever get a chance to go down to Owensboro, Kentucky is where it's at. I would definitely, and it's not expensive. I don't remember what I paid for this bottle. I want to say it was like $69 maybe.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah. I mean, most of Green River's products are in the $35 to $45 range, maybe $50. I know that the full proof you can buy at Costco for like $38.
Yep.
Which is not bad.
No, that's not bad.
And it's a good bourbon.
Very good bourbon. Yeah.
I would put it up there with Elijah Craig Small Batch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So And another cool thing about Green River is, with the opportunity of owning a whiskey brand myself, we had the unique opportunity to go down there and actually do a barrel pick and source a couple barrels from them. This last time we went down there for a fundraiser, actually for a fire captain down here where we are in Wentzville, Missouri, and we brought down 13 people and were able to do a tour and get the whole insider aspect. And Zach Macy took us around and gave us the history and actually got to sit down and have the full experience there. So
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yep.
It was pretty cool. So, well, let's move on to our next one. We got Barrel King here next. We got to finish these though. Now, I might be a little biased here on this bottle.
Sure, you want to start with that one then? Next, or do you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm just ready to taste it.
I know. They do some really cool
This
stuff.
is the first bottle from Barrel King that I've ever owned. It's 107.2 proof. This is bottle number 53, batch S224, 5224, I guess it is. And I bought this at Grillo's Chop House here in Lake St. Louis, Missouri.
Yep, Grillo's Chop and Barrel. Yep,
that's right. Chop and Barrel. I'll forget that.
No, you're fine. Unfortunately, you got to try one of the best from Barrel King right off the bat.
Yeah, I will say, I took this over to Kenny's house a couple of weeks ago, and we opened it, and I was like, holy cow, that might be the best tasting bourbon I've ever had.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that. It is smooth, amazing flavor, really, really good. And I'm going to get into their story here.
I don't know if you mentioned where they're from, but
yeah, they're in Bourbon, Missouri, so about an hour and 15 from us, probably.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they don't distill; they just blend. Am I correct on that?
Yep, blend and finish. Yep.
Blend and finish.
They source barrels, blend and finish.
Yeah, and was it you that told me most of the barrels that they source are from Indiana? Is that right?
Yep.
Or
typically out of Indiana, yes.
Yeah,
and then they finish in X rare bourbon barrels, so you're looking at probably like Stag Junior barrels or Willet Purple Top barrels, stuff like that. And then now I think they're getting in some other type of finishing barrels, as far as wine finishes and stuff like that. So they're pretty unique, and they do a lot of really cool blending and stuff like that with some older whiskeys. So yeah. And I think about their club too. They have their club, which is what is supporting them big time. So
yeah, they have a monthly membership club that I think it's like $125 a month, and you get a bottle basically delivered to your door once a month. Is that right?
That's like cotton candy.
I know, dude.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So the first time Brian and I had this was, I think, in my basement. It was a couple weeks ago or something like that. Yeah. And immediately when I put it up to my nose, I was like, "That's cotton candy!" Immediately, and I was like, "Wow,
yep,
that's impressive."
It does. It is, and it's so smooth.
Yeah. Very unique, very smooth.
Very unique on the front end, yep. A little oaky on the back end, but very smooth.
I want to say you're looking at a blend of an 11-year and 9 years, so you're going to get some of that oak coming out like that. Yeah. So for me, that's right up my alley. Anywhere between 8 and 12 years is typically what I enjoy personally. So,
damn, it's so good.
Yeah.
So good. I mean,
they killed it on that.
They killed it on this.
On that one and that other one.
This is the Barrel King Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It's like chess. The queen saves the king.
Yeah. I think right there it says a blend of 11 and 9, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so
11 and 9 year blend. 95% 11 year and 5% 9 year. So it's a 36% mash bill, Missouri single barrel.
Yeah, and I don't know if any of you have met the owners of Barrel King, but they're phenomenal people. Very humble, awesome people, doing really good things. Jared and Rachel Record. I don't know if you have anything else to touch on them, but they're just great people.
Yeah, so I'm going to share. I got their website pulled up here, and I read this, I guess, 2 weeks ago after I tasted this for the first time. I was actually reading my wife, and I thought, Jared and Rachel's story is absolutely incredible. And so I want to share with you guys tonight. Jared and Rachel basically quit their full-time jobs because their daughter Claire was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in May of 2020. And so they quit their jobs. They moved in with some family to be there for their daughter and to care for her. And then in spring of 2021, the Records began kind of exploring the process of a non-distillery. producer, so an NDP. And so they secured their liquor license, and they found a location in Bourbon, Missouri. Ironic, it's Bourbon, Missouri.
Yep.
And so they started working, and in March of 22, they opened Barrel King down in Bourbon, Missouri. Now they've already expanded since their original opening. Unfortunately, Claire ended up passing away, but I just thought, here's a husband and a wife and a mother and a father that was dealt an unfortunate set of cards, I guess you could say. And but they turned, first they put their family first foremost, right? And then they turn things like around in the way of building and establishing something kind of in memory of Claire to a certain extent. And I've never been down there. I will be going down there at some point because I think it'd be just an awesome experience. But just a kudos to Jared and Rachel for sure.
Yeah, and he refreshed my memory on that. I've been down there a couple times doing barrel picks with grills, chopping barrel, and hearing their story. I heard that story one time from Jared, and I kind of teared up a little bit because as my company's mission driven, and I think they're the same way. From day one they've been mission driven, and ever since that happened to their family, they started this, and are always willing to help out, always willing to go the extra mile. So awesome.
Yeah. Now the challenge with Barrel King is finding it. Sometimes it can be hard to find a bottle. I mean, I know Mike Grillo. He sometimes has some stuff up. That's where I got this bottle, and ironically, as Kenny and I were drinking this, whatever it was 2 weeks ago, I texted Mike and said, "Hey, you had one more bottle up there. You put that behind the counter for me. I'll be up tomorrow. I'll pick it up." And he did. But really, can you share where can you find their bottles unless you're a member of the club?
I mean, it's very difficult because their club has grown so much to the point where you're not really able to see these go to market. They're becoming rare. They're becoming hard to find. And I think, other than going down there and actually visiting their facility, you're probably not going to find it, unless you go to a small local retail, because they like to support small businesses too, and same thing with Mike Grillo's place. And so he gets a ton of stuff through them. But yeah, other than being a part of their club and joining their membership program, you're probably not going to find it many places. I mean, every once in a while in the wild, you might find it, but other than that.
Well, I felt lucky when I found it. And to get that bottle again. And now I've had,
I just recently got that 12-year.
Let's say, which ones did we sample at your house that night? We sampled was there a coconut or something?
Oh, that was Cara coconut. Yeah. That one was phenomenal.
That was good. There was a honey one.
That was blackberry honey.
Blackberry honey. Yep. You could taste the blackberry on the nose of that.
That was phenomenal. But that 12-year that Mike Grillo did a pick down there with, that was unbelievable. That wasn't a Willet Purple Top Barrel, and that was a 12-year. That thing.
Well, you're a big fan of Willet Purple.
I am. Yes. So I'm biased, but yes.
I'll say a little biased there.
I love Willet stuff, and I always have. I know some people are against pot still, but typically their upper stuff for me is always phenomenal. Anything Willet Purple Top.
I got a pot still back there from Willet that my brother-in-law Kevin Ogden gave me when he asked me to be in his wedding he's marrying my sister, and I like it. I think it's great.
You're going to open up a lot of comments here on the reviews because some people are against it, some people are for it. My wife loves it, but
I like it.
Yeah,
but there's very few bourbons I've tried that I don't like. Kenny knows which one I don't like.
Yes, I do know that. I don't know.
We won't comment on that today. Maybe down the road we
can review that one down the road.
Yeah.
3 worst bourbons we've had.
3 worst bourbons we've ever had.
Yeah,
I know 2 of them. They're on my shelf.
Right. I got one in my house too.
Oh, that's so good. All right, our final tasting is E.H. Taylor Single Barrel Bottle and Bond. And
which is probably something everybody knows,
Yeah. But it's still very hard to find.
Yeah.
Although we found it at a little hole in the wall liquor store in what town were we even in?
What town was that? It was Western Kentucky.
It was Western Kentucky. I don't know what town we were in. But... And the lady was like, Kenny's like, how much you want for the bottle? She's like, $79. She's like, okay, I'll take it. And she's like, well, hold on. Let me make a phone call real quick and make sure it is.
That was the barrel proof rye.
Oh, that was the barrel proof. Okay. Yeah.
The barrel proof rye. And she was like, I was like, how much you want for that? She goes back, looks up. She's like, $79.99. I go, what? I go, and then she goes, oh, wait, hold on.
Let me make a phone call.
I made the mistake of saying that, and then she made a phone call, come back, and goes, $250. I'm like, okay, thank you, but just a little small. mom and pop shop, but
yeah, for sure. Well, let's try it. I bought this bottle online. Wooden cork. It was not cheap. Don't buy online unless you have to.
yes, support local business.
Yeah,
please.
But I wanted a bottle of it, and so I decided to pay a little extra money and buy it online. But it's good. I mean, I've had it before, but
it is good.
It's very, very good.
Yeah. So it's a little lower proof than some of the other stuff we tried tonight.
What is it?
It's 100 proof, so it's a bottle and
bond.
100
proof. You're right.
Everything bottle and bond, typically 100 proof.
Yep.
But
get the caramel,
yeah,
vanilla, oak,
very well balanced whiskey. Got some stone fruit on the front.
You can't be saying stone fruit for the love of
I was
Jesus.
waiting for you to comment on that, but no, I get some red fruit, some cherry notes on the front. It's typical Buffalo Trace stag notes you get on the front. You get caramel, vanilla. I get just a little cinnamon, like Willet.
You get some cinnamon?
Yeah, in the middle, as you're getting through it, you get a little cinnamon spice. Not a heavy spice because it's a lot lower proof.
Oh, I do. Okay.
Yeah.
Not until you said that, though.
Mm-hmm. So you're just saying that?
No.
Okay.
I think you know me better than
yes,
that.
I know.
I just tell it like it is, man.
Very oily. I can see right now it's got a ton of legs. So overall, phenomenal whiskey. Since it has that cinnamon, I gotta love it. It's like Willet. But anyway, no, I love anything with red fruit on the front, caramel, vanilla, cinnamon notes. Awesome.
Obviously, it's distilled at Buffalo Trace, but I was doing research earlier today on the actual bottle itself, and Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor Jr. is widely considered as one of the founding fathers of bourbon, fighting for the Bottle and Bond Act of 1897. Mm-hmm. And so that's what this bottle is out of. And it said that I saw earlier today that it's usually always in Rickhouse 3 is where this is usually always aged at. And that warehouse is the same warehouse that Taylor built back in like the 1800s.
Yes.
1881, I think is what the year was. Yep.
I hate to even say this, but I'm pretty sure on a Castle and Key tour I did one time, they said that E.H. Taylor used to own Castle and Key before they purchased.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that facility, but it's
I've never.
It looks like a castle, right, when you're walking up to it. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
it's awesome. Have. Yep.
Unfortunately, I've never done it.
But don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure I remember that from the tour. It was cool.
Yeah, I've never done a Buffalo Trace tour, but we will.
Yes.
My 40th birthday.
Yep.
For sure.
Next year.
Next year.
He's not 40 yet.
Not 40 yet. Don't get me.
He will be.
Don't get me old yet, man.
Yeah.
I mean, jeez.
Jimmy Buffett.
I like it though. It's very, like you said, it's very smooth. I hate to say stone fruit, but I get a little cherry note on the front.
Mm-hmm.
Cinnamon. I didn't get the cinnamon first though, and then you said it. Now
you might get it.
I don't get any musty, dusty. I don't get any of that like I do on the Green River single barrel.
No.
Obviously vanilla is in there.
A tiny bit of butterscotch, maybe. But
subtle. It's good. It's very, very smooth. Yep. Very, very good. So if I had to rank these three, when you had to rank these three, what would you rank number one?
Oh, that's easy.
It is.
I'm going Barrel King all day. Yep.
Yeah. I would say Barrel King is 1 for me. I would do E.H. Taylor 2, and then Green River 3. And that's not saying Green River is not good, because it's good. It's a very good bottle. Mm-hmm. But that's how I would rank them.
Yeah, they're all very good whiskeys, but yes, I would rank them the same. Barrel King's just so unique that, with the blends and all that stuff, obviously the other two are single barrel picks. So, for me, when they blend it and they get them kind of notes and that finish on it, man, it's just, you can't beat it. So to me, Barrel King's number one.
You're more of a whiskey or bourbon connoisseur than I am. Is blending a kind of a newer thing, or has it always been a thing?
It's been around for a little bit, but it is a newer thing. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, because is that what Rare Character does as well, kind of? Or how's Rare Character do
so
theirs?
Rare Character will do single barrel picks, and they will also do blending and finishing. So they do all three. And that is a newer trend in the industry to sort of kind of keep sales going and keep the market up, because you can always have flagships and same mash bills all the time, but people nowadays want that one-off, unique, limited kind of stuff. Any bourbon enthusiast is always going to want that. So yeah.
Pretty cool. Especially if you're a bourbon collector, because then not everybody's going to be able to get that bottle.
And I think unfortunately, if you own a brand nowadays, you almost have to go that direction at some point, unless you're some big company where you got private capital coming in and purchasing you and just driving sales. Or if you have the funds to market that flagships or those everydayers, then you can go that route. But to me, in order to separate yourself and to make money in this industry, you have to blend, finish, and just release single barrels. Yeah,
for sure. Did you say Barrel King did a thing with the Bourbon Society? No, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I don't think they did. But so I'm a fireman right now currently, and we actually did a pick with Grillo's Shop and Barrel, and so it was for our community outreach.
That's right.
And so our community outreach basically puts families up into hotels if their house was to catch fire for a couple of days, or we build wheelchair ramps or anything inside the community that they need help with. And so basically we linked up with Grillo's and we went down to Barrel King. We did a pick, and everything we made off of that went directly to our firefighter community outreach program. Yeah. So that's the
bottle I got back here.
Yeah. Cherry.
And Bob just bought.
Yeah. The cherry warm goodness. Yep.
Yeah. It's good. Very good. Bob loved it.
Yep. So basically it was like eating cherry waffles essentially with maple syrup on it, so it was a rye.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know how I feel about rice.
I know.
Although I will say,
I'm breaking you.
You're breaking me.
I'm breaking you.
I got to give Western Kentucky a little credit here.
I think that Hemingway is up there.
The Hemingway rye is finished in a rum cask barrel.
And Olarosa sherry cask.
And Olarosa, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't drink like a rye.
No.
It is delicious.
Yep. I think that rum and that Olarosa sherry cask definitely balance it out,
Yeah.
So, and for somebody like you that's not necessarily a proponent of ryes, I think this one definitely caters to people like you that are trying giving it a chance, essentially giving ryes a chance. And, I think eventually you will grow onto it. Yes.
Probably.
Because honestly, that's how I was in the beginning. I was all bourbon and now, my taste buds are leaning almost more towards ryes, than anything. So, and I think that,
I think a lot of people have told me, like even when we were down at Western Kentucky, the Zach and Spencer were talking about how they never liked ryes, and now they're getting to a point where that's all they want is a rye.
Yeah. Kind of becoming a snob. Yeah, I think.
Are you sommelier?
Yeah, right. Well, I seem to think I am, but I'm not. I have no credentials. No. So.
Oh, that's funny. Let's talk about our first trip to Kentucky. We kind of already touched on it, but we'll talk a little bit about that. So you want to tell us about why we went down to Green River and talk a little bit more about, I guess, the mission of Fallen Brothers and how you tied your mission in to help a fellow firefighter out here in Wentzville, Missouri, where we both live. And talk about that experience, and I'll add some stuff as we gotta go into it.
Sure, yeah. So our mission number one is to basically give back to families that lost a loved one in the line of duty. However, in the certain circumstance that you're talking about, Fire Captain Tommy Shine out of Wentzville Fire Protection District, he ended up having some difficult times here recently. He fell off a ladder, hit his head, basically had some staples in the back of his head. They did some scans, and they found an aneurysm in his heart. So they took him to surgery. They sealed him back up. Then he went in cardiac arrest for 72 minutes. They were able to revive him. However, he had a stroke, then ended up having a couple seizures, and all the vasopressors that he was on during that, which is a drug that pushes blood back to the heart for circulation, caused him to have some tissue necrosis in all of his limbs. So he recently had some amputations. He's in Chicago right now, gets prosthetics, making a massive recovery. You got to understand that this guy basically, he was intubated at the time, but they were putting him on comfort measures at one point to pull the plug, and that was it for him.
Yeah, I can remember. I remember a Facebook post that talked about that. Like he wasn't gonna make it.
Yeah, so it was eventually the end for him, and it's sad to even talk about this, but I don't know if you remember that the Lake St. Louis, they actually have a movie about it.
Called Breakthrough.
Yeah, there was a young kid that fell through the ice and was under the water for 15 minutes. Well, Tommy Shine was the guy that went in and got him and rescued him, and they revived that kid. Well, that kid's now an adult, and he actually went to visit Tommy at the hospital the day they were about to extubate him, which means pull the intubation tube out and put him on comfort measures. Well, that kid got off the elevator and walked in the room, and Tommy basically perked up and started talking out of nowhere. And, if that don't give you goosebumps, I don't know what does.
I don't know what does.
But like right now, my hair's standing up. Excuse my language. But it's pretty crazy.
Right. I marked the podcast as explicit.
Okay, I was gonna say
there's no way we're gonna.
I'm trying.
There's no way we're gonna be able to not say a cuss word here and there when we're drinking bourbon and talking about.
This story chokes you up a little bit. But anyway, long story short, that happened, and it's an amazing story. And he's on the road to recovery. He's got his prosthetics. He's in rehab. He's almost walking on his own now. His eyesight's back to 80%. He's pretty much all with it. He was in a coma for a while too. So anyway, I guess I went off on a tangent there. I guess the moral story.
It was important.
I had to explain that to get to what we're about ready to talk about, which is what led me to go to Green River. My brand is a brand that sources whiskey. We don't distill anything currently. Now in the future we might, but we actually sourced a couple barrels from Green River. I took a team of like 13 people down, Tommy's wife, his son, they were all on that barrel pick with us. It was a special event, so we went down there, chose a barrel. Zach Macy, obviously, he gave us the tour and all that. We're giving $5,000 back to the family to take care of any medical bills or anything, to assist the family in any way,
Well, I also was cool was, and I'm sure a lot of this was Zach, but when we went up to actually do the tasting, they had the Rise and Shine logo. They had pictures of Tommy Shine on all the TVs. And you could tell Brittany was touched by that. Yep. You could tell Logan was touched by that. They did a phenomenal job. And I will say most of that was probably Zach Macy, who, you and I have both become friends with. But it was an incredible experience. I will say that I got to see, we went to rack houses. We went behind the scenes. We tried their, I call it White Lightning, but it's what do they call it? White wine?
Yeah, they're White Dog. Or their wine, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Which was just interesting. I never had done that before. But the whole tour was absolutely incredible. And, my hat off to Green River and Zach on how they handled that.
They were definitely great hosts because we had more than usual this time around on the pick,
And we sampled 6?
We sampled 5 that time around. When I talked to Zach on the phone, he's like, we had a number and it was like 9 and then it grew to 11 and then it grew to 13. He's like, man, dude, you got to cut it off. But I was like, man, this is such a special pick, man. Yeah. We have to get it to 13. I wanted to be able to include everybody on this pick and to be a part of it because to me it means the world. I work in a next door neighboring department to Tommy Shine, so I knew Tommy, and to me this means the world to be able to do this opportunity to do a barrel pick for them and also give them, the help they need. So,
and I will say that trip was smooth.
It was.
Our second trip to Kentucky.
Well, that's a different story, but what was I telling you the whole time? It's never easy, right?
That's never easy. So
is that what I said?
Yeah.
I said about 5 times. They go,
about 5 times.
With me, it's never easy.
So Tuesday morning last week, we leave the house at 5:30, 5:45. My truck, his trailer, start driving down to Louisville because we had to pick up how many bottles?
About 417.
417 glass bottles.
That's enough for the next 2 releases.
And so we timed it, well, at least we thought, so that we would have about an hour that we could stop at Peerless and do a tasting, maybe buy a bottle or 2. We failed. As we're driving, the clock changes, and I said, "Oh shit, they're on Eastern time zone." Ken goes, "I didn't even think about that." So we're like, "Okay, well, we now have 5 minutes to run into Peerless, right?" We ran in. You got your toasted rye,
which, by the way, is absolutely incredible. They just released it, I think, a few weeks ago, and it's phenomenal. So
yeah, and so we ran in, grabbed that. I grabbed a souvenir of some kind. We jumped back in the truck, headed back towards Shepherdsville, Kentucky, to pick up the bottles at Savor Glass. We pull in. There's 8 semi trucks.
I didn't realize how big this bottle company is. like I said, I'm a newer brand, so like to me, I'm out here sourcing and trying to figure out, where to get the best price for bottles and all this other stuff. And this company's massive.
Massive. So there's like 4 tractor trailers in front of us. Then my F-150 and a flatbed trailer, and then like 3 tractor trailers behind us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we are definitely out of place here. Anyways, long story short, they loaded up the bottles. They did a terrible job of packaging, I will say that. Yes. We had to stop, I don't know, 2 or 3 different times because we were leaving there to head to Western Kentucky Distillery.
Yeah, we had a meeting at Western Kentucky at 1:30, so we had a time crunch, and that's why we had limited time to go to Peerless. So
so we
screwed up.
We stopped at a Hardee's. It was a great chicken sandwich, by the way.
It was great. Yes. I haven't had Hardee's in probably 15 years.
I didn't even know they still existed, by the way.
I know.
Jump back in the truck. We're shoving food down our throat as we're driving, and all of a sudden the clock goes backwards. I look at Kenny and I go, what the hell? He goes, oh, they're in Central Time. So the whole day we're rushing.
Yes. And
we had plenty of time to enjoy ourselves, but it made for a good experience. We did a little bourbon hunt in the town that Western Kentucky's in, and I'll tell you what, I was very impressed with Western Kentucky.
I was impressed with Western Kentucky. I don't know about the town.
Well, I'm talking about the distillery.
Yes, the distillery itself is very cool. It's awesome. It's brand new. They do 50,000 barrels a year. They got 6 rickhouses currently with over 16,000 barrels in each rickhouse. So
yeah,
I think, what do you say? 2021 is when they basically started. 22 was when they actually opened, I think.
Correct.
So yeah.
And if you don't know about Western Kentucky, the actual master distiller at Green River, Jacob Cald.
Yeah. So he was the first employee when Green River actually restarted back up in
2014.
2014. And so he basically at one point left there and with another guy and started Western Kentucky Distilling Company. And
he's 8th generation. So we're sitting there in this meeting having a conversation about, Jacob and, his 8th generation. And Zach and Spencer tell us that his, again, 8th generation, grandfather, great-grandfather, whatever you want to call that, actually was in a lawsuit with Elijah Craig. Remember that?
Yep,
When they talking about that? Like,
I remember that.
Samuel, I think his name was Samuel.
It is, yep.
Was in a lawsuit with Elijah Craig way back in the day.
They released a release that had that name on it, and now it's sold out.
Yep. And so I'll tell you, it was the cleanest distillery I've ever been to.
Oh, it's yes.
I mean, like,
it was the most thought out, clean
design. Everything flows.
Everything flowed from start to finish as far as how you'd want a distillery to be at that massive capacity they can run.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And so then we
and honestly, to me, it was more like a family to me than it was anything else.
Totally.
They basically brought us in and took us under their wing like we belonged to them already, which was, to me, is awesome because that's what you're looking for,
Yeah, I will say, and we'll be having them on the show here down the road.
And plus, I think they are the ones that are there's something new called the Estate Whiskey Alliance that's popped up recently, and I think they're part of it, and they're actually, I think Jacob Call's actually heading that up a little bit, so. And that's going to be a big thing. That's going to start popping up on bottles. There's going to be logos called the State Whiskey Alliance, and we'll actually start talking about that here in the future, and tell you guys and kind of explain to you guys what that is.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I actually just listened to a recent podcast to where they were talking about the State Whiskey Alliance. And
I think, was it Spencer or Zach?
It's very new.
It's like there's only 13 distilleries even doing it right now.
There is only 13 distilleries, and it's extremely new.
And it's out of University of Kentucky.
Yes, they're the ones that are kind of funding it because Jim Beam funds University of Kentucky and all that. So
gotcha.
I think, there's some money there to get this whole thing started and all that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think it costs $10,000 a year to be a part of it, which is going to be hard for these smaller craft distilleries to be a part of it because you got to think about $10,000 in a craft distillery versus a Jim Beam.
Right.
That's huge, So how are they going to do it? Are they going to do a tiered system? Are they going to just keep the? They almost have to because they can't run the same amount Jim Beam can run every year, you know? So, how are they going to pay the same amount of money, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Very true. Very true.
Anyway, not to get off on that tangent, but that was part of what I was listening to earlier on a podcast and stuff like that.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely.
So I think we need to maybe talk about that down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when we bring Western Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, Western Kentucky's already agreed to come on the show, and they don't know it yet, but we're going to hit them up for a sponsorship here soon, and I'm sure they're going to be more happy to do it. They were great guys, and I guess we can formally announce that Zach Macy has also left Green River and has joined them at Western Kentucky. And as we kind of talked about, Kenny and I have become good friends with Zach, and we're glad to be working with him again. I think I won't speak for Kenny, but I think there's a partnership in the works between Western Kentucky Distillery and Fallen Brothers. And from what the 2-3 hours that we sat there and talked to those guys, it's a partnership, not a vendorship. You could feel it. You could feel the way they were pulling bottles of different samples off and letting us try things that, the original tasting was 3 or 4.
Yeah, 4.
4, and then they just started pulling things off. Like, you want to try this? You want to try this? And that's how I tried the Hemingway Rye, and I was like, wow.
Hemingway Rye is good.
It was good. It was very good.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because it's a small world. Like, I didn't know Zach Macy was leaving Green River to go to Western Kentucky before we even – because him and I had a teams meeting in Western Kentucky just to kind of have a formal introduction and all that stuff, and never knew Zach Macy was leaving Green River. And he was my contract sales guy at Green River, and next thing you know, I'm talking to him, and come to find out, he's actually put his 2 weeks in at Green River and is coming to Western Kentucky. And it's like, buddy, are you following me? Or what, but I felt awkward the whole time. Remember I told you that? I'm like, man, I can't tell Zach. I'm going to Western Kentucky, and I'm talking to them, but I don't want to tell him because I don't want to make him feel bad that I'm like leaving him or whatever. And
well, there was no doubt that you and Zach had formed a bond, and there was a friendship there, and you definitely were worried about that. Yes. But then I'll never forget. I was in my garage. I was building something for my wife. I don't remember what I was building.
Oh, the paneling.
The paneling of the 1x2s in the master bedroom. And Kenny calls me. He's like, "You're not going to believe this," and tells me a story that him and Zach had chatted, and Zach was going to Western Kentucky, and I'm like, holy cow. And we had a meeting 3 days later with Western Kentucky.
Yep.
Just a cool story. But those guys were great. Some of the bourbons they have right now, Silk Velvet is one of the brands.
Yeah, that's one of the employees there. That's his brand. He owns it. And, they're all single barrels. So, everything they do is single barrel release. And then they have the Western Kentucky Distilling actual single barrel release that we have.
Which is very good.
It's a 7-year. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Very good. Mm-hmm. They're not distributing in Missouri yet, but I think that's coming pretty soon.
They're headed there. I think they do more contract distilling than anything else currently, but they're actually getting ready to launch. They got 2 barrels. What was it?
Buffalo Turkey.
The Buffalo Turkey barrels. Yeah. So
15 years.
They're wild turkey barrels that were aged in Buffalo Trace warehouses, and they're 15 years old. So I can only imagine what that's going to taste like. And
it's going to be hard to get.
Hopefully I can get her. Hopefully we can get one.
Hopefully we can get the hookup on it, right?
Maybe if
we can sample it here.
You know what? Maybe when they come here, we can review it. So I don't know. But we had the opportunity. They were actually running the test labels for it when we were down there, and actually the barrels were down there, and those are definitely some old barrels.
Yeah, they were. So you could look. You just looking at them, you could tell they were old.
No, I was jealous.
So then on the way home from Western Kentucky, what did we get hit with 30, 40 mile an hour winds with 2 barrels in the back and 417 glass bottles?
Well, if you ask my wife, we had 18 tornadoes even before we left, and I should stay the night there again. It's like shit. But
it was windy though.
Yeah,
that trailer was moving.
She definitely gave me a warning though.
She did. She said 75 miles an hour wind.
She's always very cautious.
Like, Kenny we'll be fine. It didn't rain on us the way home, but it was windy as all get out.
It didn't, but I got the barrels in my garage and the door shut before, and then right as I did that, it started pouring down. Yep. Rain. So I got lucky there. But we got lucky on the way home. It was definitely windy, but it wasn't as bad.
It wasn't as terrible.
Yeah. So
and then you took them.
My wife might exaggerate, but wives never exaggerate, though, right?
Well,
they don't.
I won't go there. My wife exaggerates all the time. I tell her she's a drama queen. She says she's not.
Mine never.
I love her to death, though. She's the best.
Mine doesn't exaggerate. I'll never say she does. But hey, we've been together 18 years, so
there you go.
That might be a reason why.
It might be. Then I guess today you took them down to Blacksmith.
I did. Yep. So we're in the in between stage with this brand of having our own building, getting our own DSP. So we gotta obviously get transfer and bond forms and have these barrels shipped to different facilities for bottling and labeling and all that. So Russ Broker out of Blacksmith Artisanal Spirits, which he'll be on this podcast at some point here. He was gracious enough to let us go down there and store our barrels down there and do the bottling and labeling, all that down there. So I had to drive 2 hours on Jeff City this morning and basically drop them off and let them sit for a week before we bottle them, and then go to my son's birthday party at 3, and then come over here for the podcast. So we typical Sunday.
Yeah. Well,
until football season.
You could have been better. You could have been down in our neighborhood pond watching a Audi SUV get pulled out of our pond.
That is true. That's why you're on the HOA and I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm on the HOA.
I know, right? That's because you care a little bit, But
I guess
that was definitely interesting. That whole scenario that happened.
A little interesting, yep. It is. So, well, I tell you what, I think this has been a great first episode. Mm-hmm. We got to share our thoughts on these 3 bottles again: Green River Single Barrel, Barrel King, and the E.H. Taylor Single Barrel Bottle and Bond. All 3 great picks. If you ever see them in the store, I would snag them if you can. And hopefully you learned something tonight from our reviews and our experiences in Kentucky. Hopefully you laughed a little bit, made fun of us a little bit. It's all part of the game. We know that.
We're definitely very easy to make fun of, that's for sure.
Hey, I called you last week and it was like, hey, do you have a red hat? I'm wearing like red shorts and need something to match my hat. My wife goes, are you kidding me? You need a red hat?
Well, that's because you're trying to impress Zach Macy.
He's a Cardinals fan.
He lives in Kentucky and he's a Cardinals fan. So
who else are you going to root for in Kentucky?
That's true. No,
Cincinnati?
No. But anyway.
So
I gave you a red hat and everything worked
out great.
And he was impressed.
Zach was impressed. He liked my Cardinals polo, my Cardinals shorts.
Yes.
Even had my Cardinals shoes on, man. I was all for Zach. You're welcome, Zach. I know you're listening to this, buddy.
Or you will be.
Yes.
So anyway.
But thanks guys for tuning in. Again, we'll be back here in 2 weeks on Friday. We'll be releasing an episode every other Friday talking about, again, a couple new bottles, talk about a different experience that either Kenny or I have had or we've had together. We ask that you like and follow us down below. We have a YouTube channel, Facebook channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcasts, wherever you follow social media, we'll be out there. Follow us and like us because we've got some really, really exciting things coming up in the future that we have planned out. Special guests that we're going to be having coming on. At least probably once a month we'll have a special guest. Maybe every other month we'll figure that out as kind of the time goes. But all this whole show is all about just sharing our experiences with bourbon in real life. That's all it is. And so we hope you enjoyed this episode tonight. Make sure you give us a review if you're listening. We appreciate that.
Yeah, and one last thing to touch on, I think, if there's anything you ever want to hear from us or ask us any questions, just leave them in the comments and we'll be happy to answer them on the show.
Yeah, or you can email us at the Barrel Club or Barrel Room Podcast at gmail.com. That's the Barrel Room Podcast at gmail.com. You can email us. We'll talk about it on the show.
Yep.
If you have a question or you want us to try a certain bottle, we'd be more than happy to.
Or any topics you want us to cover, we'll definitely cover those.
Yeah,
so.
For sure.
Anyway, so thank you, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.